Hello, Nisha Miss. ഹലോ
എന്തു കേൾക്കാമോ?
ആ കേൾക്കാം.
എനിക്ക് കേൾക്കാൻ
കേൾക്കാം.
പറ്റുന്നില്ല.
അല്ല നിഷ മിസ്സിന് കേൾക്കാം. ഒന്നുകൂടെ ആ പിൻ ഊരി കുത്തി നോക്കാമോ?
നിഷ
ഇപ്പൊ കേൾക്കാം.
കേൾക്കാം.
ആ
നിഷയ്ക്ക് കേൾക്കാം.
Nisha Miss,
ആ
is
കേൾക്കാം.
it audible now?
ആ
Okay. Okay. A warm good morning to all. Welcome to today's seminar. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. I am Dr. Sandhya Suresh, Assistant Professor of the Department of Home Science. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. The participants are requested to mute their audio and turn off your video during the webinar. Please do not click the option present now as it may interrupt the audio and video of the presenter. We will be running a Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you have any queries, just pop them in the chat box. The link for the feedback form will be shared in the chat box during the concluding part of the webinar. And certificates will be issued only to those participants who fill it and send it on time. Please furnish the correct email address in the feedback form. The e-certificate will be issued to everyone within 2 days and not on immediately submitting the feedback form. Today, we have a presentation on healthy aging, spotlight on intergenerational landscaping for the well-being of older adults by Dr. Nisha SHEEN, Professor, Department of Community Services, St. Lawrence College, Ontario, Canada. The United Nations International Day of Older Persons is celebrated annually on October 1st to recognize the contributions of older persons and to examine issues that affect their lives. On this auspicious day, we are fortunate enough to have an eminent resource person who is having the doctorate degree in gerontology. Now, without further ado, we will start the webinar with welcome speech. I request Dr. Aswathy Sugunan, Head of the Department of Home Science, to welcome the gathering and introduce the resource person of the day.
Good morning to you all. Respected Manager of Sri Narayana Colleges, Revalapalli Addition, our beloved Principal, Dr. Nisha J. Tharayil, our resource person of the day, Dr. Nisha SHEEN, faculty across various disciplines and dear participants in the webinar. The Department of Home Science is delighted and honored to host an international webinar on the occasion of World Elderly Day. In today's webinar, we address a significant area that is about old age problems, healthy aging, which is one of the most discussed topics nowadays. The year 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the United Nations and the 30th anniversary of the International Day of Older Persons. This year has also seen an emergence of COVID-19 that has caused an upheaval across the world. Considering the higher risk confronted by older persons during the outbreak of pandemics such as COVID-19, policy and programmatic interventions must be targeted towards raising awareness of their special needs. Recognizing older persons' contribution to their own health and the multiple roles they play in the preparedness and response phase of current and future pandemics is also important. This year has also been recognized as the Year of the Nurse and Midwife. International Day of the Older Person 2020 will highlight the role of the healthcare workforce in contributing to the health of older persons, with special recognition of the nursing profession and a primary focus on the role of women who are relatively undervalued and in most cases inadequately compensated. The 2020 observance will also promote the decade of healthy aging, that is 2020-2030, and help bring together UN experts, civil society, government, and the health profession to discuss the 5 strategic objectives of the Global Strategy and Action Plan on Aging and Health, while noting the progress and challenges in their realization. The Global Strategy is well integrated into the Sustainable Development Goals, while aging issues cut across the 17 goals, especially Goal 3, which aims to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being of all at all ages. The theme of International Day of Older Persons 2020 aims to, first one, to inform about the strategic objectives for the decade of healthy aging, raise awareness of the special health needs of the older persons and of their contribution to their own health and to the functioning of the societies in which they live, increase awareness and appreciation of the role of the healthcare workforce in maintaining and improving the health of older persons with special attention to the nursing profession. Present proposals for reducing the health disparities between older persons in the developed and developing countries so as to leave no one behind. And last, increased understanding of the impact of COVID-19 on older persons and its impact on healthcare policy, planning, and attitudes. Let me now move on with my duty of welcoming the dignitaries. Sri Vellapalli Nadeshan, manager Srinarayana Colleges, is the patron for the webinar and has been continuously extending his support to the functioning of our college. On behalf of the Srinarayana College for Women, Department of Home Science, and on my personal behalf, I extend a very respectful welcome to you, sir. I would now welcome our beloved principal, Dr. Nisha Tharayil, who has always been very helpful and encouraging, guiding the activities of our department. On behalf of our department and on my personal behalf, I extend a warm welcome to you, madam. Our speaker of the day, Dr. Nisha SHEEN, joins us from Ontario, Canada. She is the part-time professor of Department of Community Services at the St. Lawrence College, Ontario, Canada. She is a dedicated educator with proven track record of fostering student-centered classroom environments based on mutual respect and collaboration that drives learners to pursue academic and personal excellence. Committed with passion towards teaching, research, and community services at post-secondary educational institutions in various socio-cultural backgrounds. Possesses commendable communication, planning, supervision, and administrative skills, along with constructive and effective teaching methods which help expand academic programs, policies, and initiatives to promote quality education and research. She took a PG and PhD degree in Aging and Nutrition from University of Kerala. She has vast research experience, especially in the area of gerontology. She was the Flair Visiting Scholar at University of Utah University in connection with aging research. She was a research assistant in an aging research project at University of Waterloo, Canada. She is a community volunteer for the older adults, day programming, and long-term care homes in 3 cities in Ontario. She is a resource person for healthy aging information at culture and community organizations in Ontario. So it is a great pleasure to have such a noted personality to address this morning on the occasion of World Elderly Day. On behalf of the Department of Home Science, Srinarayana College for Women, and all present here, I extend a very cordial welcome to Dr. Nisha. We are delighted to have a lot of faculties and researchers across various disciplines joining us on this zone to participate in the webinar. An extra special word of welcome goes to each one of them who have taken the time out to be here this morning. I welcome all the participants who are virtually here with us and hope that the valuable messages you take from this webinar would be effective. I also thank the coordinator of this webinar, Ms. Indu Suresh. And now, once again, here, hearty welcome, big and warm enough to encompass you all. Wishing you all a great time ahead. Thank you. Now, I request our esteemed resource person, Dr. Nisha SHEEN, to start her presentation. Over to you, Nisha.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a good start of the day. Thank you, Dr. Aswathy, for this kind introduction. I would like to thank all the faculty of the Department of Home Science at SN College for Women, Kollam, for facilitating this webinar and having me here. I also feel extremely excited and humbled and privileged to be back to my alma mater after so many years, even though it's a virtual presentation. So before starting, I would like to make a disclaimer statement that the content of this presentation is only for informational purposes, and the views and opinions expressed as a part of this webinar are solely from my research and academic observations, readings, understandings, and experience, and does not necessarily reflect any institution or persons. So let's start now. Okay, so as Dr. Ashwati mentioned, I'll be talking today about a topic that is becoming relevant and may have profound impact on the quality of life of older adults in the current pandemic scenario. And all of you who are joining in this webinar, thank you and a warm welcome. Today is the International Day of Older Persons, a day observed in commemoration of older persons across the globe. This year is special in that 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the United Nations and the 30th anniversary of the International Day of Older Persons. Besides, the United Nations has declared this decade 2020 to 2030 as the decade of healthy aging, as a call to bring together all the governments, civil society, international agencies, professionals, academia, the media, and the private sector for 10 years of collaborative action to improve the lives of older people, their families, and their communities in which they live. As the world is in the clutches of COVID pandemic since the beginning of this year, policy and program interventions must be specifically targeted towards the existing needs of the older adults. So today, I'm going to walk you through the following contents: a brief about the demographic scenario of the older adults, the concepts of healthy aging, well-being, the determinants and key considerations, the present COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the older adults in this context, the intergenerational relationships and activities, which is the core theme of today's webinar, the ideas and benefits and recommendations, and finally, the constraints related to this intergenerational landscaping. The general assumption was that human life was simply programmed to stop after a certain period. There was a ceiling for human existence, and we had just about hit it. But contrary to the expectations, life expectancy continued to increase. People are living longer than earlier and healthier in many parts of the world due to multiple factors. Factors are advancements in medical technologies, lower birth rates, and a decline in child mortality and fertility. Even though it's one of the crowning achievements of the last century, it has posed multiple challenges too. Societal aging, if not well planned and sustained, may affect economic growth and many other issues, including sustainability of families, ability of the governments to provide healthcare, and other resources for the emerging older population. Although many older adults enjoy healthy aging and live in a good physical and mental condition, even into and beyond the 80s, a significant number of older persons face declining health and age based disabilities caused or exacerbated by external factors. Meanwhile, the continued prevalence of communicable diseases as well as non communicable diseases and lifestyle diseases also contribute to the decline of the older person's health and well being. On top of that, the unprecedented challenges and changes due to the emergence of COVID-19 has caused an upheaval across the world. A quick look at the comparison of global demographic scenario of older adults shows that in 2019, there were 703 million persons aged 65 or over, and over the next 3 decades, it's projected to be 1.5 billion in 2050. It is estimated that older people will constitute 22% of the total world population by 2025, that is, within a span of 5 years from now. Globally, the share of population aged 65 years or over increased from 6% in 1990 to 9% in 2019 to 16% in 2050, so that 1 in 6 people in the world will be 65 years of age or over. The projections of world population by age groups in this graphic representation depicts the increasing rate of older population across 2030 and 2050. It's surprising to note in the projection that the number of older adults outnumber the number of children in the coming decades. All regions across the world will see an increase in the size of the older population between 2020 and 2050. But unfortunately, 80% of them will be living in low income and middle income countries. There is much evidence on this, but I'm not going to the further details here. Roughly in Canada, older adults constitute 1.5% of the population, whereas in India, it's 22% of the entire population. The number of centenarians in Canada, that is 100 years of age and above, is 11,517 as of 2020. The government of India recently stated in Parliament that India will have 34 crore people above 60 years of age by 2050. That will be more than total population of United States. It's alarming. We should have sufficient resources and infrastructure to address this astounding rise of older population. Moving on to the concept of healthy aging. So, what is healthy aging? The phrase typically evokes images of older adults riding bikes, working in a garden, jogging, doing yoga, and eating healthy foods. Healthy aging is so much more than these activities older adults engage in a day. No one wakes up one day in their 60s in sudden good health. Healthy aging is a part of the life continuum, meaning it's influenced by what happens to us across our lifetime and by the conditions in the social and physical environments in which people are born, live, play, and work. Besides, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual identity, age, disability, income, and even the postal code contribute to the individual's ability to achieve good health and receive appropriate health services over the course of a lifetime. In the past decades, healthy aging was identified as the ability to detach oneself from the activities of midlife as a kind of preparatory step towards the end of life. But nowadays, the definition goes like the World Health Organization defines healthy aging as a process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well being in older age. The functional ability refers to a person's ability to meet the basic needs of eating, bathing, toileting, dressing, and to learn and grow and make decisions in life, to be mobile, to move around by himself or herself or with assistance, and to build and maintain relationships and to contribute to the society. This functional ability is made up of the intrinsic capacity of the individual, that's his thoughts, perceptions, and relevant environmental characteristics and the interaction between them. Before diving into the concept of well being, let me take a brief moment to list the key determinants of healthy aging. As you can see from the diagram, the determinants are compressed into five: the nutrition, lifestyle, environment, genetics, medical, and healthcare. I want to I want you to think about these determinants from your subjective lens, and by the end of this webinar, you would be able to differentiate between healthy aging, well-being, and how to harness the concept of intergenerational landscaping into it. There's no single consensus about the term well-being, but there's a general agreement that, at minimum, well-being includes the presence of positive emotions and moods, the absence of negative emotions, satisfaction with life, fulfillment, and positive functioning. In simple terms, well-being can be described as judging one's life positively and feeling good. Researchers from across different disciplines have examined different aspects of well-being. It can be listed as the physical well being, economic well being, social, emotional, psychological. It can be about life satisfaction of the individual, about its development and activities. It can be domain specific satisfaction or engaging activities and work. The concepts of healthy aging and well being are interrelated with overlapping determinants. But the difference is that healthy aging is a process and well-being is a state or perception. Now let's have a look at the determining factors of well-being and how it is measured and how it can be achieved during old age. The domains or determinants of well-being varies across nations, across cultures and geographic locations. This is the Canadian Index of Well-being. This is one of the globally recognized tools to measure the well-being of the population. According to this index, the well-being of a population or a person or a group of individuals is measured based on these eight domains. The domains are living standards, education of the population, leisure and culture, environment in which the population is living, the time used by the population, democratic engagement by the citizens, healthy populations, and community vitality. As I mentioned, the determinants or domains vary across countries. Here I'm presenting the determinants of well-being in the Indian context. There are numerous categories of determinants in the literature, so I have just picked this one for the presentation. According to this framework, there are five determinants of well-being: the activities of daily living, psychological strength, the life accomplishment and social ties of the population, the health status, and the socio-demographic and living arrangements with life and religiosity. So, some key considerations to be taken into account at the individual, societal, organizational, and systemic levels to facilitate or foster healthy aging are the following. The first one is diversity. There's no typical older person. Some 80-year-olds have levels of physical and mental capacity that can be compared with that of 30-year-olds. Others of the same age, on the other hand, may require extensive care and support for basic activities like dressing and eating. Importantly, the relationships we have with our environment are shaped by factors such as family we are born into, our sex, our ethnicity, level of education, and financial resources. Equity and inclusion. The policies, resources, and infrastructure should be framed in such a way that it offers equitable and inclusive support to all the members of the population. Making communities livable through policies that champion equity and inclusion and community and health services will improve better health outcomes for all ages and races. Again, supportive environments. It referred to the creating policies, services, programs, and surroundings that enable healthy aging in the settings where older people can live, work, learn, love, recreate, and worship. Some examples of supportive environments are the creation of age-friendly communities that facilitates judgment-free social interaction for seniors and provides safe, attractive places to walk and be physically active. There should be accessible transportation, smoke-free public places, senior-friendly restaurants, and grocery stores that enable and encourage healthy eating, and policies that reduce inequalities. Supporting each other emotionally and physically by sharing ideas, information, resources, and experiences facilitates healthy aging. It also means recognizing and supporting seniors' efforts in volunteerism, self help groups, caregiving, and the informal support family members provide to each other. Taking interest in one's own health, for example, an older person choosing to get active or to join a community club, and developing personal skills are other considerations to be noted. We know that since the COVID outbreak, many seniors have learned to use mobile phones and devices for payment of bills, transactions, purchases, connecting with families, etc. To make healthy choices and carry through with these choices, older people need tailored and accessible information and help learning skills for healthy aging. In spite of these mechanisms, older people also have some social needs that are diverse, such as the need for proximity and meaningful relationships. Typically, towards old age, social circles get shrinked and the frequency of contact with friends and loved ones tend to decrease. Just as relationships with close friends or family members are important, relationships with neighbors and other members of the community also play significant roles. Having a social support network will contribute to older adults' feelings of safety, comfort, and connectivity. Even casual conversations with strangers during a morning or evening walk can fulfill some of the social needs of older adults and contribute to their well being. Last but not the least, the need for reciprocity. Relationships are always stronger when there is some reciprocity. Receiving support and care from others, as well as helping others and contributing to the society, makes older adults develop a sense of independence and purpose. So, these setbacks of healthy aging, well-being, and the key considerations for healthy aging prepares the ground for our transition to the key theme of intergenerational landscaping for the well-being of elderly. I just mentioned about the older adults and social needs of mutual help, proximity, reciprocity, and meaningful relationships. Social connectedness has a positive effect on well-being. But unfortunately, majority of elderly are vulnerable to a decline in social network and support due to some factors such as retirement from work, bodily changes, declining health, and increases in disability, sensory loss, mobility restrictions, and the loss of loved ones or spouses. Social isolation and exclusion apparently increase the risk of poor health and may even act as predictors of death. A large number of research studies have linked social isolation and loneliness to higher risk of cardiovascular diseases, obesity, mental illness, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease, and even death. Until a few decades ago, older generations were much more involved with younger people and vice versa. The breakdown of joint families and increasing familial migration brought about a shift in this phenomenon. Babies are now living thousands of miles away from their grandparents, and aging adults live several states or continents away from their children. Over the time, lives became busier. Parents are having children later in their life and living greater distance from their parents. As the proportions of young and old continue to change, supporting intergenerational relationships become especially important for the health of older adults. Mutual aid is a reciprocal process across generations. Older adults have often reported higher levels of satisfaction with their social relationships than younger adults in several studies. Let's now unpack the meaning of intergenerational relationships and activities. Intergenerational relationship is not a novel idea or phenomenon. In simple terms, it refers to the chain of relationships between aging parents, adult children, grandchildren, and even great grandchildren. It can also be relationships among those who are not tied by blood or family, cross generations in the family and community. Intergenerational activities are social engagements and interactions bringing together younger and older generations for a common purpose. Intergenerational interactions have been suggested to promote active and healthy aging as well as a means to prevent death ideations, social isolation, and loneliness. Recent years have seen a resurgence of interest in fostering interactions among both younger and older generations looking for ways to tackle their loneliness in old age. Today, there's a more informed recognition of the important contribution that older people make to their families, communities, and the nation. Foster grandparenting or adopting a grandparent are recent patterns of facilitating intergenerational relationships. Active participation of older adults and grandparents in kids' summer camps and art and cultural festivals can help strengthen their ties and bonds. Another innovative practice of intergenerational landscaping by a Canadian university is a co-generational housing program where the older adults share their home with university students. This would also address things like ageism and isolation. Older adults are concerned about the world they are leaving behind for their grandchildren and other younger generation, whereas the young are concerned about the state of the world they will inherit. Here are some key benefits of intergenerational interactions. Older adults feel valued and useful for the society, which enhances their self esteem. They experience new energy, their physical and mental health and well being is improved. They learn new skills such as how to use digital devices, how to read books to young children, and they get updated with technology. Whereas the young generation learn about traditions, food production, local history, develop new competencies like cooking skills or gardening, build significant relationship with elderly people, they experience calm and structure, they receive more attention, especially in time poor families. They learn citizenship values and norms such as having respect, being polite, being helpful, and become aware of aging and of other cultures. Communities benefit by all generations being together, learning together, and having fun together. Not only does the individual well being of citizens grow, the community as a whole benefits. Citizens learn to build social relationships without fear. They learn to value and respect each other. They learn to negotiate how to do things and how to disagree, and the stereotypes about age, gender, and culture are challenged. In this landscape, a recent research project I've been engaged with was aimed at integrating the children and youth with the older adults in a rural community in Canada. Our strategy was to identify the gaps and find a place where these generations could connect. For this study, we chose curling clubs as one of the most sought recreational activities in Canada. The curling clubs were chosen as a community space where both generations could gather in the weekends. What's important to know is that intergenerational landscaping is not a concept that should be confined to grandparents and grandchildren within the family. A recent survey in the United States found two-thirds of adults would like to spend more time with people outside their family in different age groups. And three-quarters wanted more opportunities in their community to meet and get to know more people of different ages. Adult daycare centers for seniors have boomed over the past few decades, and integrating babies and the elderly in a daycare center together may sound far-fetched, but is one of the most promising ways to help alleviate elderly isolation and expose children to a generation they might otherwise never know. Researchers at Stanford University pointed out that aging adults are one of the best groups to spend time with young children because they can pass the torch of decades of wisdom with ample availability and patience and provide the kind of stimulation that young children need to thrive. The COVID pandemic situation has encouraged many families to more regularly communicate through virtual media or telephonic conversations. In the absence of regular family visits and celebrations, these interactions are missing. One of the silver linings of the pandemic is that the golden role of technology to connect people. For example, the New York Times recently published a story about a grandmother speaking with her grandchildren more and two grandparents recording their voices and songs and reading bedtime stories to their young grandchildren. The COVID pandemic has also instilled the urge among many youth to volunteer to cater to the needs of isolated older adults by getting them grocery, medicines, and other essentials. Although there's a concern that younger adults may harbor some kind of resentment to older adults, it's still common to see younger people creating opportunities to help the older adults at times of needs. Well, there could be a lot of projects and initiatives in your area or within your community you could relate that are attractive and geared up to different kinds of people. Things may not be necessarily having the intergenerational in the title. Long-term care homes for or old age homes use intergenerational programs as a way to expose youth to careers in aging. Strategic partnerships with local high schools, colleges, and universities to develop programs would benefit the educational institutions and the housing community as well. Some intergenerational programs can be viewed as a way to instill a sense of volunteerism, civic responsibility, and social justice among the elderly residents. Intergenerational programs are especially relevant in communities that are experiencing greater diversity, including a surge in immigrant populations, as in Canada. Here are some interesting ideas or activities for the intergenerational landscaping. It's touching to see young and old working together to do something positive to the community around them. Can be like literary forums, walking groups, play park for all ages, can be knitting together, community garden, drama and singing, some quiz for seniors, can be even litter picking, chatting with younger generation through Skype, doing some art and crafts together, so and so. Research from Washington University and Johns Hopkins University showed that intergenerational volunteering is good for older people's mental and physical health. A different study by Hopkins found that after 6 months of tutoring students with the college, the older adults had improved brain and cognitive function. According to another study, working with students dusted off the cobwebs in the brains of the older adults. It's amazing. In spite of the bright side, there are some accompanied or anticipated challenges to be considered while implementing these intergenerational programs. Clashes or conflicts might occur at any point of the program or activity or interaction due to the intergenerational gaps, stereotyping, and systemic barriers. What you can do is to do an adequate analysis of the background. That is, you have to take into consideration the cultural, cognitive, socioeconomic, familial, and other factors before planning the intergenerational programs, whether in a community or in an institution. Besides, training of the students, volunteers, youth and volunteers involved in the program or event is another prerequisite. Not least, supervision. Adequate supervision should be ensured in such settings as there are possibilities of clash of ideas, prejudices, levels of patience, and other cognitive disparities among the generations. All you need is mandatorily empathy, patience, and understanding. I'll hover over a few more realities surrounding ageism amidst the COVID pandemic. We are experiencing a historical moment with an unprecedented challenge of the COVID-19 global pandemic, which will have a long term and profound impact on older adults' health and well being. In the West and countries where COVID took heavy toll on the lives of older adults, the new phrases of zero pandemic or boomer remover is getting unappealingly popular in the literature and media. The crisis has revealed ingrained ageism and age stereotyping in the society. Despite challenges stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic, opportunities for improving the lives of older people may arise from the crisis. These opportunities pertain to increased connectivity through technology, family, and intergenerational relationships, and to improve quality of life by reducing social isolation and increasing self care and management. As I come to the close of this webinar, I would like you to take you to this image which quotes that it's interesting. Intergenerational programs are a vaccination against ageism and a prescription for longevity. There's always something new to learn, whether you are 7 or 77. So, to reiterate at this point, healthy aging can delay and minimize the severity of chronic diseases and disabilities in later life, promoting well being. Older adults can live longer, healthier lives by staying socially connected, increasing their levels of physical activity, eating in a healthy way, and refraining from smoking and alcohol. But there are real environmental, systemic, and social barriers to adopting these healthy behaviors. These barriers and inequities need to be and can be addressed through a combination of political will, public support, and personal effort. We, the academia, should keep articulating the opportunities to be seized, including increased comfort with technology and online platforms, research, stronger family and intergenerational connections, strategies to combat social isolation, more respect for self care and time management, and potentially increased interest across disciplines to work on the issues of aging society. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was really thought-provoking. Participants, now we will go ahead and take some time for questions. If you have any queries, please pop them in the chat box. Or you can unmute your mic and ask. Ma'am, Nisha ma'am, there is a question in the chat box by Swati. What are the ways in which we can ensure equitable and inclusive intergenerational programs for older adults in a community setting?
Okay, thank you for the question, Swati. So we had a detailed elaboration about the various intergenerational programs for the older adults. So as students and youth, or even as academicians, what we can do is we should ensure that these programs are equitable, judgment free, and is equally accessible for all the diverse group. As I already mentioned, that no older adult is this it's a diverse group, so no people are different, so their abilities, cognitive abilities, their requirements and needs vary. So if you're conducting a program, or planning or conducting a program in a group, we have to consider the cognitive abilities, their language, their cultural differences, their backgrounds, so that it is equally accessible to all the members in the group. So I can cite an example, like for example, if in a group of the older adults, if you are planning to conduct a sing along program, like say for example, reminiscing the songs of the 50s or 60s. So what we should consider is that as we run the program, we should take into account that if it's a group of 10 people, not everyone will be having the same capabilities of listening or articulation. Some will be having the problem of articulation, some of them will be having listening problems with listening, some of them will have memory loss, problems, difficulty in memorizing the songs of the 50s and 60s. So these are the individual differences. So what we should do is, like, while planning and implementing such programs, we should, the first thing we should do is to make a background analysis of the group. We should be well aware of the needs and requirements and backgrounds of the each and every individual in the group. That's how we can ensure equity and inclusion for the intergenerational programs.
There's another question from Parvati. How much exercise do people over age really need?
Well, that's a bit. I cannot answer that in a nutshell because it depends upon each person's physical abilities, his age, his bodily requirements, his conditions, disease conditions. It depends on a number of factors. It cannot be, we cannot like suggest or recommend without knowing the background of the details, the vitals of that person.
Okay, ma'am. Another question from Grishma. Why is there a difference in the domains of well-being across countries?
Okay, so I had presented two different frameworks of domains of well-being. One was the Canadian Index of Well-being, and the another one was the index, the framework of well-being in the Indian context. From that, we can see that there is difference in the domains or the determinants because it varies across countries, across geography, across the. It varies depending on the culture of the people, the type of population, the living standards, because it will be different. Say, for example, in Canada, when we compare a developing country and a developed country and an underdeveloped country, these factors will be different. The living standards, the education, the type of employment of the people, and the living standards, the way they use their time, their pattern of occupation, their culture, ethnicity, race, gender, all these factors vary across the countries and nations, even the climate, even the geographic locations. That's the reason why these determinants of well-being differ across nations. So we cannot use a particular or a single framework to assess the well-being of population across the world. So, but this Canadian Index of Well-being is one of the globally accepted and used index for assessing the well-being, but it may not be fitting the context in India or in a European country. That's the reason why it varies. Any other questions or concerns or comments? As students or
And
researchers,
there's a question.
okay.
Excuse me, ma'am. There's a question from Pramila. She's asking, shouldn't we think of the spiritual well-being of them too, as she thinks it's the core of all other types of well-being?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for the question, but I cannot authoritatively comment on that aspect because, again, as we mentioned about the determinants of well-being, we cannot incorporate this. I think, from my viewpoint, is that we cannot incorporate the spirituality into that because it's not a it's not a universal phenomenon because there may be people who are segments of population who are atheist. So if we incorporate that component in this index or as a determinant, it may not be suitable for all segments of the population. Maybe for a particular group of people or for a particular community or a specific cohort, we can use that determinant, but not for a general whole population or a nation's index. I don't think we can use that component.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question. What are the possibilities and opportunities in aging research in the coming years? This is a question from Aswathy Ajay Kumar.
Well, as we discussed, we are all well aware that about the alarming rise of elderly population across the globe, across the nations. So from that, we can understand that this is the need of the hour because, of course, it's an achievement that we have been able to extend the lifespan or longevity of the population. We know the life expectancy is um, in the Indian context and across the nations, there's a hike in the life expectancy. It's an accomplishment, but still there are challenges and threats to this rising population scenario because um, the governments and the policymakers have to ensure that their policies, the structures, resources, and everything has to be planned and implemented in such a way that it is accessible to all the. It should it and we should ensure that it's meeting the needs and requirements of the all segments of the population, especially the older adults. So as researchers and students, we can what you can do is drill down further into these issues and challenges and find out the filling find out the gaps, and we can frame our research questions in such a way that it address the needs of these needs and issues of these older adults. As we know, the most common issues are nowadays the non-communicable diseases, chronic illnesses of obesity, diabetes, hypertension, lifestyle diseases. These are the pressing issues of the older adults. And another issue is the dementia and social isolation. So research studies can be directed in line with these issues and challenges. So there is, as the population, just like the population, elderly population is expanding, the field of gerontology and geriatrics is also expanding with a lot of opportunities for research. So what as students, you have the prospects of conducting this research in aging as a part of your BSc or MSc projects, your program planning projects, or you can take it for your master's thesis, dissertation. So there are a lot of scope, opportunities and scope for research in aging, and the governments are investing a lot of funding for this aging research, and it'll be this pattern will be following in the future also, because the population is alarmingly increasing.
Okay, ma'am. Last question by Pooja Chanda. What are the factors responsible for successful aging? How we can ensure that?
I think I already discussed it in the presentation. There are multiple factors. You want me to reiterate on that?
Okay, ma'am. Who- Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah. Do you want me to go back to that previous slide or just?
Ma'am, since we are running short of time,
Okay, okay.
we are going to the concluding session of our webinar. And before
No
we wrap up,
problem.
I invite Ms. Indu Suresh to propose the vote of thanks. Respected Manager of SN Colleges, Sri Vellapalli Nadeshan, Principal Dr. Nisha Tharayil, Head of the Department of Home Science, Dr. Aswathy Sugunan, and all the participants, I deem it a great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this webinar a grand success. First and foremost, I memorize the blessings of Almighty in the smooth conduct of this webinar. I take this opportunity to place on record our heartfelt gratitude to our manager, Sri Vellapalli Nadeshan, for the support and inspiration rendered for organizing the webinar. Our principal, Dr. Nisha Tharayil, was the backbone of our endeavor. And on behalf of the Department of Home Science, I express our profound thanks to you, madam, for the perfect logistic support and guidance. On behalf of the Department of Home Science, I express our deep sense of gratitude to the resource person of the day, Dr. Nisha SHEEN, for gracing the webinar with her thought-provoking and interesting address on health aging. I hope all the participants have truly benefited from this. My deep sense of appreciation to Master Ashwin Arun for his technical support. Big thank you to our head of the department, Dr. Aswathy Sugunan, for the efforts she has put in for successfully organizing this webinar. Finally, I thank all the participants for their patient listening and active participation. Thank you. Thank you, Indu Suresh, and thank you everyone. We appreciate you being here, and we will see you next time. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha ma'am. We had a great time and hope all are benefited from your webinar. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you too. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwati. Thank you, Dr. Indu, and all the faculty and the principal and the management for facilitating and giving me an opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.